Well, welcome everyone. As you know, we normally do our appearance in the morning. We form our blog, we meet and discuss the events of the day and the week. But Pat McGart slept in this morning. So he's only just crawled
Yeah.
out of bed and got his hair combed and he's looking as fit as ever. Welcome from bed, Pat.
Thanks very much, Jude.
Okay. Let's talk about something we were talking about before we came on the air there, and that is the this Ireland's future event that's going to be held at the Odyssey. Well, it was the Odyssey and it's now the SSE Arena or something like that in Belfast.
Yeah.
And they're expecting quite a crowd because that's a big stadium. The leader of Naomi Long, the leader of the Alliance Party, was to speak at it, but she has dropped out because she says she's really busy with running for office and so on. And she sent her Nuala McAllister, an MLA, in her place. What do you think of that, Pat? Is that a smart move on her part, or is it fighting shy of coming
Jude, I think we both know. I heard was it Jim Allister or somebody referring to her, the Alliance Party, as crypto nationalists or proto nationalists or whatever the word was.
Yeah.
And I was thinking they're ready. Anybody that isn't on their score sheet type thing in regard to the union is a nationalist. So I presume, and I'm only working on the basis that if Naomi Long shows up at something that's to do with the future of United Ireland, even if she, even as opposed to it, it's like the old one. A lot of the unions are sort of saying, no, there might be United Ireland, but let's not talk about it. No, it's not civilized to talk about it. And I think somebody like Naomi Long showing up at that would leave her wide open to the Jamie Brysons and the Jim Allisters and the on the 4th of July.
It's funny she wouldn't have spotted that from a mile away. I mean, I could work that out in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
But why did she agree to it in the first place? Because you don't, if you're the Alliance Party, the last thing you want to do is be pinned down in this whole constitutional question. Eventually, I think that'll have to come. But the Alliance Party was founded on the idea of setting aside the constitutional question and getting on with a sensible everyday. To some extent, actually, the SDLP was that way in its early days. John Hume wasn't interested in nationalism. He wanted to get rights within British rights as British subjects.
Yeah.
But the Alliance parties, well, SDLP has been forced to sort of take a stand on that and is very definitely a nationalist party now. Naomi is trying to postpone the evil day, I guess. And she would be right too, because she'll make more progress that way, won't she? If they can't nail her on that, she's safe for the moment, and she's got a good chance. Do you think we should take East Belfast?
Well, it's looking like she could. Gavin Robinson hasn't set the world on fire. And
did you hear that interview with him with Crawley? Crawley did an interview with him.
No, Jude, I missed that, but I'm told it wasn't exactly riveting affair. But what they call it, Alliance tries to say they're agnostic when it comes to the constitutional question. Jude, I don't know how far that takes you these days, but anyway, sorry, you know more about the Gavin Robinson. I must that fill me in.
Well, it's just that he came across, he tried to speak in a calm and fatherly way, and he tried to almost talk down to Crawley and say, oh, there you go again, there you go again. And in the end, he came across as what I've always thought he looked like, a sort of smart sixth former, who's adopting the trappings of learning, but maybe hasn't got the meat and veg of learning. So I don't think he did himself any great favors. He didn't have any awful gaffes either, but you didn't. I didn't think any higher of him or see him as any more of a threat after he'd finished. But it will be interesting, this Ireland's future thing. We might have to even go to it ourselves, Pat. And tell them what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, and then we'll explain it to everybody else later on.
We'll explain it very slowly.
And not use any big words. But who was it? Wasn't there somewhere that they said they shouldn't use too many big words? The DUP was the DUP's emails or something, where they said somebody was going to be in the room, so don't use any big words. Oh yes,
that was the
SDLP woman.
The SDLP, Nicola Mallon. It was,
Aye.
I was thinking it was your man, the barrister, the baby
Yes,
barrister,
yes. Yeah.
the guy who was the
Peter
education
Weir.
minister,
Peter
Peter
Weir.
Weir. That's him.
It was amazing.
Yeah,
I was amazed at that. I didn't think Weir was that kind of guy. And secondly, to be talking down to somebody in that way, I have a feeling there was nervousness and a fear of her, maybe, that they were trying to belittle her,
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
let's go on to the topic's been all over our screens. And I've got my own feelings in this now. And that's the D-Day landings, which I guess were, what
yeah.
would that be? That was in 44.
80 years ago.
80 years ago.
80. Yeah, yeah.
And they've been, we've been having reminiscences of it, and there's old guys making speeches about what they did, and people hailing what the whole event was about and the importance of fighting together and so on. What's your sort of gut reaction to that, Pat? And then maybe your more considered reaction.
Uh, I'm never quite sure about that whole thing. I always sort of ambiguous about it. Like, I know there was a lot of heroic people, and they fought for what they believed in, right, and all that sort of stuff, and so on. But geez, there's also a lot of propaganda. I know that's sort of the Hollywood version, and then during that whole period, like what there was about 130 Irish men fought for Britain.
130,000? 130,000?
Yeah, yeah, and and then my youngest son is married into a girl whose great grandfather won the VC Victoria Cross,
Wow.
and he came back to Ireland and back to Letterkenny, and basically was, I'm not saying shunned, but probably, I guess, not um, lauded or sort of acknowledged. And there's that thing, that whole thing about Ireland. It's always something that I sort of, the Brits were saying they were fighting for the small nations, and
Hmm.
yet, what they were doing in Ireland was, executing our leaders in the 1916.
Mhm.
There was the economic war. We've had a long history, 800 years of Brit rule and oppression. So, Jude, I have never got my head around it. Look, I am not. By the way, I am not. I know. Doing down those who fought in the Second World War and fought, and I do believe that on the right people won, because Jude, Nazism was a horrible, horrible ideology.
Yes, I guess you're right from what we know of it. Although I often wonder, I did a blog today and I was saying, I wonder if, just supposing the Nazis had won, would we all be subject to them and would we all learning German? And then I was thinking, if Germany's doing rather well for a beaten country, it's leading Europe now,
Yeah,
has done
yeah,
for the last 20, 30 years. Um, I have mixed feelings. For example, there's well over 5,000 soldiers in the Irish army that deserted so they
yeah,
could join the British army and fight. I presume the British, I think they might have joined Canadian army and so on as well, but mainly the British army to fight alongside. Two things. Well, the one thing strikes me is how could it's either very brave or very foolhardy. I could never see myself, even at 18 or 19, being so fired up that I would land myself in a situation where I was coming off one of those boats to storm the Normandy beaches. Like we
yeah,
talked about the troubles here, and we said if your dad
yeah,
was dragged down the stairs by the hair, yeah, you might have a different view on things. But
yeah,
no, none of the people, none of the Irish people, certainly, uh, who went to war on behalf of Britain or as part of the British forces, none of them had their dad dragged down. It was
no,
a
no,
distant war, really. So
yeah.
what fired them up? Was it? I
Jude,
thought at
I
first
don't know.
because
Have you ever read Gone with the Wind?
uh,
And it's all set around the Civil War in America. But one of the parts at the start was that where all these young men without breaking the Civil War were rushing to. It was excitement and all. I thought, it's excitement about getting somebody firing a bullet at you. I never got that. I'm just never. I thought, keep that, if that's excitement, not for me.
I had the same because a lot of people have that view. That remember the general that said somebody complimented him how well his forces were fighting, and then he says the average age is only 17, and he said they wouldn't do it if they're any older than 17. Well,
Yeah,
when I was
yeah,
17, I had a very strongly developed sense of self-preservation, even playing football.
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
steer clear of the guys.
I know the guys would they would dive with their head in where people put you. I was
Uh,
never one of them.
no, no, nor was I. Nor was I. So I don't quite get it. But it might have been, of course, the propaganda. If you think of the First World War, I mean, they used to have the women going out and giving a white feather to people who weren't out fighting
Yeah,
for the country, and gallant little Belgium and all the rest. Although we know, in fact,
yeah.
that that was a bloody waste, a desperate waste of millions of lives. Uh,
But then there was also that thing that it's often forgotten, economics. When you joined the British Army,
uh,
you were getting paid, and you were getting 4 square meals a day and whatever. Maybe if you're living in squalor in some of the tenement buildings in Dublin, the prospect of getting shot might not have been all that bad.
well, I don't know if they would have been resigned to being killed, but yeah,
Yeah,
I remember in Oma actually, which was a garrison town when I was growing up. I used to see posters that would say, "Join the army and see the world."
yeah,
Now they were going to see
yeah,
the world, but they could easily have been sent to Kenya or somewhere like that, where
yeah,
they might have had a fairly hot time of it. But that I suppose
yeah,
that mixture of adventure of seeing the world and also you like violence at that age, and you don't quite appreciate the fact that it could be lethal
yeah,
violence. Uh,
yeah.
anyway,
Uh,
good luck to them.
uh,
I feel very sad for your story about the man that had the VC and was to some degree shunned. And that's a
I just
very small thing.
sort of after he died, they put up a plaque in his memory, but he was long gone.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
really, in a way, he went out onto against sharpshooters, and I think brought back 2 people and saved their lives. He was sort of like a, what do you call him, stretcher bearer. I
Yeah.
think that's what he's role. And he was unarmed as far as I remember, and
Really.
brought back, dude, that is real courage. Do it once,
Mm. Mm.
by
Mm.
God, was bullets flying around you, but having the courage to go a second time,
Oh, amazing.
dude,
Amazing.
no matter who you are, you have to
Aye.
admire that sort of
Aye.
courage,
Aye. I
and I
suppose
do.
our thinking or the thinking of Irish people at the time be very black and white. They were fighting for Britain. Although I do think that De Valera's answer well, we were told in history class in my last year, which is the only year we studied Irish history, and I remember the teacher saying that Churchill essentially promised the end of partition if Ireland came into the war, the Second World War, on the side of Britain and the Allies, and that
Yeah,
De Valera is supposed to have sent him a telegram saying, "Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you." No, it's not very right.
yeah.
No, fool me
I near
once,
enough.
shame on you. Fool me twice,
Uh,
shame on me.
Same on me.
Um,
Yeah,
so I sort of resent that, because there still is a lingering sense in Britain that the Irish, didn't join the war effort, and they should have, the South of Ireland, that is. But
yeah,
I mean, the whole thing about being independent is that you make your own decisions.
yeah.
Switzerland wasn't in the war either.
And as well as that, Jude, the executions of the 1916 leaders was very, very fresh, and the
Yeah,
memories of many people. Jude, there was less than what, sort of 20 years.
yeah,
What they were executed between 18 and 1918, 1919 type thing.
yeah,
Well, no, it'd be quicker than that, but it was like a little over 20 years.
yeah.
That was the barbarity of all that. There was no
Mhm.
way many people in Ireland said. In fact, a lot of them would have maybe had kinder feelings towards Germany than they would have had towards Britain.
That's right. That's right. In fact, the IRA was supposed to have had connections with German. Well, wasn't it through Germans that Roger Casement was getting weapons to Ireland?
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
remember, it's like Muhammad Ali said about he says, "I'm not going to fight the Viet Cong." He says, "No, no yellow man called me a nigger." That's quite
Yeah.
legitimate. But Judge, which brings me on, because I know you mightn't think of. I just read earlier on today, Netanyahu, and this is unbelievable, has been invited to address the joint houses of the American, that's the Senate and the Congress. And Jude, I'm sort of, I couldn't believe it. Will they invite the Palestinians to give it? That's an unbelievable. Will they invite the Palestinian leader to give his say? I think it's right up there. What was inviting Stalin over to America, or inviting, Adolf Hitler to explain, why he did this to the Jews. No,
Yeah.
it's propaganda. It's
Uh,
unbelievable that
it's,
they're.
the death of satire, that kind of thing. It's like they said
Yeah,
satire died the day that Henry Kissinger was given the Nobel Peace Prize. Uh,
yeah.
I don't quite get. I suppose it must be
I don't
running
get the
very deep
Americans
in
did.
the psyche of the American people, and Joe Biden's scared shitless that he'll somehow seem
Yeah.
soft on Gaza. Uh, I, I mean, it is so obvious that what's wrong. It's a terrible, terrible thing going on. I don't want to talk about that. I really don't want to talk about that.
No, no. When I read it this morning, I thought, good merciful, that here is a setup deliberately to sort of give the American electorate a chance. We're with this guy who's now responsible for 36,000 dead, 70,000 wounded, the almost total obliteration of Gaza. I saw one of these apologists for Israel the last day. There's 500 trucks sitting outside. The UN isn't doing its job, but it's not Israel's fault. Israel bombed the shit out of a lot of those convoys for months, and now they can't get people to go in because it was so dangerous. And now they're saying it's not our fault. The hypocrisy of it all, it just goes from one day to the next. But the fact that he's been Netanyahu, I regard it nearly up there as giving Adolf Hitler a platform. I really genuinely do.
Well, I wonder if it's the first time that a certified war criminal has been invited
Yeah.
to address the joint houses of Congress. Stop. Okay,
Anyway,
let's go on to the election, which is it taking place today, Pat? Is it in the south?
what's that?
Is the election in the south?
It's European elections in the south,
Aye.
and
There's quite a bit. There's a fair coverage of it in the Irish Times, and they're saying that we shouldn't be distracted by personalities. That there's a lot of policy at stake. I think they're right there. People aren't thinking about. Well, they are thinking about one policy, and that is immigration. I can't believe how immigration has taken over everything. Even housing has been pushed into second place. But I mean, the article in the Irish Times lists a number of big issues, like that we're an aging population, and what are we going to do about that? Somebody's going to have to come. We're going to have to have immigrants to look after us. Climate crisis, and what that's going to bring to us, because if it finds its way where it's going at the moment, we're finished. The human race is finished. I mean, it's amazing to say that, but nobody seems to be too concerned. And then, of course, there's AI, this whole artificial intelligence thing. And then there's the threat of a third world war. So it's very difficult to know why people aren't voting for those who would take a stand against that. And it's also hard to know, why is it that the politicians aren't really noting all those things and saying, when I go to there, I will fight for these matters, and I'll see to it that things that are going to affect the climate are dealt with, or at least that the EU is against it. Do you think they're playing just Lickman Flanagan, look at my lovely ponytail stuff?
I know, right. I'm just throwing this out. The Israelis are talking about maybe going into Lebanon. And if that happens, there could be a lot of a major escalation of the war in the Middle East. The Americans are saying that they have given weapons to Ukraine that they can use to fire anti-Russia, which was a red line up until recently. So that's another danger. Putin's coming back and said, if you go and do that, that doesn't mean to say we can't come back in the other do it in reverse, that the Russians can't fire anti-German cities or whatever. I don't think he's going to be stupid enough to do that, but the threat is there. They're talking in Spain that they're expecting up to 50 degrees this summer. That it's going to be a record. I think was it the 12 warmest months in succession have been the past 12 months. And all this, and this is all happening. By the way, the EPP, I think they're called, the European, whatever it is, they're the right centre right group.
Yeah.
They they're going even more right to look after the interests of business, and the climate is not one of their big issues. Remember in 2019, Jude, there was this big green wave right across Europe. A lot of people got elected, to save the planet. Well, now there's sort of it seems like a pushback against that. And then the other thing, Jude, the Fine Gael group in the Republic. By the way, I'm going all over the place because there's so many things there. They're going to support the re-election of Ursula von der Leyen,
Oh,
which
yes.
I think is a disgrace on the Irish nation. I really genuinely do.
Uh-huh.
So they're saying the personalities don't matter. I'm not so sure.
Well, the parties, Pat, as far as I have read this anyway, Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin are both opposed to the re-election of Ursula von der Leyen. And I really hope they do, because she clearly has thrown in her lot with Israel. I found, are you clear on the workings of the EU? Because I wasn't until I read the Irish Times a couple of days ago how it actually works. Because the big charge Britain made was that it was undemocratic. There were laws being made abroad, and that we weren't having they weren't having any say in these laws, and therefore to break away.
There's a lot of truth in that, Jude. Actually, there is a lot of the commission makes, as far as I make, does the legislation, and then the parliament debates it. But I don't know how much the parliament can actually change it.
Well, listen, what you think that's wrong? Do you think it should be the parliament should do the whole thing, and the commission shouldn't?
Well, the parliament are the direct representatives of the people.
Aye, that's right. So is that not that is democracy, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's sort
of
this
a bad system, Pat.
The commission's like the cabinet, and the parliament is like the MPs.
Yeah,
but it should, in the way in Britain this last week, the prime minister has almost become a dictator. That they can bypass parliament, and so on. And it seems to be increasingly happening in the EU that the commission is the real powerhouse and the parliament's a talking shop.
Well, I hate to say it, Pat, but if you have a parliament, I suppose the same thing applies to Westminster. If you've got a parliament that's made up of over 700 people, you take an awful long time getting them to agree to something. Whereas if you're working with 27 people that are prime ministers or whatever they are from each country, there's more likely to at least have some speed of progress, whatever the issue might be. So I sort of have sympathy with the way it is. I also think that should be much clearer to people, because Britain and Brexit people have managed to convince the world, or a lot of people, certainly a lot of British people, that they really have no say, that there's a bunch of people over there and they're just passing laws and that's it. But the fact of the matter is that Britain is one of the people in the room, same as Ireland is one of the people in the room. The thing that worries me actually is I have a sneaking suspicion, and it's not too sneaking either, that Germany and France are the two countries that actually, they're sort of the, what would you call them? Super members of the cabinet.
They're the big boys in the room. Yeah, without question.
You get the feeling that they decide what's going to happen. The rest are told sign here, and then it goes to the parliament.
Look at the thing. Remember Claire Daly and Mick Wallace went ape the time Ursula von der Leyen when we support Israel 100%. Remember they would both of them got up in the parliament and says, who gave her the authority to speak for us? Who gave her the right to determine policy? That she had that phrase ultra vires outside the power. So on. But it should not happen to her. Like and she hasn't, as far as I know, recanted from that position she's on. Now there's a sort of the EU have sort of pulled on its horns a wee bit, but it's like Keir Starmer now. And Israel is now suddenly supporting a two-state solution because it's suddenly, I think they've copped on that it's playing so badly, not just with Muslims, but with very middle of the road people who just don't like what's going on.
Yeah. In that article in the Irish Times that I read, I think it was this morning, they note the fact that since the South joined the EEC in 1973, that the average person is living 11 years longer, and they have halved the birth rate from 22 to 11 new babies per 1,000 of the population, and the South has full employment, and they've got all sorts of benefits in terms of traveling through Europe. So Well, I personally would be very much in favour of the EU, but I think
Yeah.
it could do with a wee bit of revision, or more than a wee bit of revision. I think the danger would be you throw out the baby with the bathwater. Would you agree?
During the crisis, the economic crisis, the EU was no friend of Ireland, and I have had very severe. They punished the small nations. They didn't take on Italy. They didn't take on Spain, but they took on Ireland. They took on Cyprus. They took on what some of the other smaller countries,
Mm.
and who paid a big price.
Mm.
You know, so. But even what do you call this? The Greek finance minister, whose name's gone, he was a very intelligent guy. Even though
Yanis
they treated
Yiannopoulos or
Greece very,
whatever.
someone along those lines. Yeah,
Yanis is
bollocks, it's
his
gone.
first name. We'll call him Yanis. We're familiar terms with him.
Yeah, we'll call him Yanis. He's a highly intelligent guy.
Yeah.
He said the way they had treated Greece was disgrace. You know, rather than helping them when they were down, they started kicking them. And I accepted that Greece was an author to a large extent of its own misfortune. But anyway, bottom line of it all, Judy, what he said was, but despite all its faults, the EU is an overall a good thing, and he supported the EU, and I would be the same, Jude. But it does need accountability, it does need transparency, and
Yeah.
it does need a serious revision. You know.
Pat, you and I think we must have been part of the birth, because I think exactly what you've said. That I think the EU is, it seems to me so obvious that is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing for trade, and I think it's a good thing for culture too. You know, it's good for us to know and have ease of communication with and ease of movement through European countries. You see it with some of the representatives that spend a few years, like Mairead McGuinness. I mean, they look so much better. They talk so much better. They dress so much better. Even some of the big cultures of Ulster Unionists that went out, you know, they take on a certain
Give back
sheen.
different people.
Yeah. There's no harm in that. I by and large, my experience is very limited. I suppose I've only been in about 2 or 3 European countries. But I always liked the people in it, and I always thought it was good for me to be there. And it helps to take the edge of your parochialism. We tend to think very parochial, I think, if we're not left an opportunity.
Jude, we were going on off to Spain some weeks ago, right? We flew out of Belfast. We arrived at Alicante Airport, and you got out of the plane, the heat hit you, and you walked through up to the security check. There's a guy sitting there, and he says, EU passports, go that way. UK passports, go that way. Jude, we were through the channel checkpoints in I'd say about 3 minutes. You should have seen the queue around the block for the UK passports, because they had to go through all this rigmarole and the handing the passports, checking out, and all that sort of stuff. Jude, and I've met quite a few people in Spain, English people, and Jude, stood up. I have not met one yet, and this is going on now for what? Brexit happened 2016. I have yet to meet one single English person who told me that Brexit was a good idea. So Jude, work it out for yourself.
They raised it. I was looking at last night at Question Time, which was on 8 o'clock, and the question was raised in the audience. There was guys in the audience saying, Brexit's bloody rubbish. We should apply and go back in. You know, now not everybody agreed with it, and they were nervous to say it, but they actually hear that said. I think that's wonderful, because they're going to go back in again eventually. You know, it's only a question of how long they're prepared to flagellate themselves and let their country go down the tubes. But so anyway, I think by and large I give 7, 8 out of 10 to the EU, and maybe say must try harder. Would that be reasonable?
No, I'd go lower. I'd say 6. Room to improve.
I know you.
You're the school teacher.
Come and see me in my study later.
Come and see me in my study. Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll maybe finish with this, except you have some bright stuff. There's an article which talks about the fact that the University of Bolton wants to change its name. And it's creating a lot of brouhaha up about that part of England, northwest. It wants to become known as the University of Greater Manchester. And the other universities around it are blowing their tops. Does that kind of thing matter, Pat? Is that just what's in the name?
I think it does, Jude. Yeah. the University of Greater Manchester. In the south, I did so brilliantly in my leaving cert that my option I failed maths. By the way, just so people get the full picture.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
back then, when you failed maths, there was no way you were going to university. So that was that out of the question. There was this thing called the Regional Technical College in Letterkenny.
Mm.
And did the first, I've often used the sort of the place looked like it was built by a cheap Australian set designer for one of them cheap soaps. The building. I remember there were plastic chairs and plastic tables. There was nothing of quality in it. I was out there quite recently, and it's now knowing 40 years later, 50 years later, whatever the hell it is the Atlantic Technical University. And it's a superb place, and everything is, it's so much better. So, Jude, what's in the name? Quite a lot.
I actually agree with you. And I can see the reason universities around would be cheesed off with the idea of this place becoming known as the University of Greater Manchester, because a lot of people would sort of put the greatest, they'd be thinking mentally the greatest, and
Yeah,
attach it to university. So the greatest University of Manchester.
yeah,
Besides that, if you think here, if you just even look at the University of Ulster, I remember when we merged with the new University of Ulster. That's the Ulster
yeah,
Polytechnic merged with NUU. I
yeah,
remember a woman, a fairly ambitious woman, who she gave us a lecture on how lucky we were to have this name, the
yeah,
University of Ulster, and there were many people who be very jealous of it. And it mattered so much to them that they've now changed all the signs. It's no longer the University of
yeah,
Ulster. It's now Ulster University. Uh,
yeah,
why they did that baffles me. But I'll tell you this, I am amazed that they've got away with this for so long. The Ulster University caters for the 6 counties.
yeah.
That's what it caters for. It's not the University of Ulster. It's not Donegal's not part of its remit at all.
Nope.
There's Monaghan. So why are they allowed to say that? And why do we so often radio BBC Radio Ulster? It's so patently not true. And now, do you think I'm being pernickety about that? I don't care if you do or not, because I think it's just it's an effort to give legit. And our old history teacher taught us this as well. It's an effort to give legitimacy to something that is by its nature totally artificial. If you look at the border.
Yeah, but look at the other side of the story too, Jude. Look, the Brits, they gave themselves the title Great Britain. Just cited that. I mean, remember as well. It's one of the English kings. Somebody gave him a steak. It was so good, and it was a loin steak. And he says, "I am going to unite that," and he called it sirloin. Apparently, it's true. So there's a lot in the name. So, like the other thing as well, Jude. I know people get confused. I was asked not all that long ago, is UCD the same as DCU? One is University College Dublin, the
Yeah, yeah,
other is Dublin City University.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you can understand, Jude, why a lot of people are sort of saying, what's in
Aye,
a name? A name
aye,
can be very, very confusing. I
aye.
remember what I call the wee guy. He was chairperson of the Conservative Party. He was a writer, Jeffrey Archer.
Why?
He claimed that he went to, Cambridge, University of Cambridge and so on. Apparently, if you check it out, he went to some sort of satellite college that was in Cambridge. You know,
Well, I know a lot of people have done that. Like there's an
yeah,
Oxford Polytechnic, and
yeah,
they say start talking and say, "Well, when I was studying in Oxford." you know?
yes, yeah.
Anyway, uh,
Remember, it was a famous story about a lot of African guys came to Britain in the 50s and 60s, and they used to say, "BA Oxford" and brackets failed. you know,
I
you
used
know,
to know an Englishman, he was quite a good footballer actually. He was teaching along with me in Canada, and he really was very English, and he got along very well with the kids. But the kids were very, very
uh,
impressed. He was English, and they were saying, "Oh, Mr. O'Grady," his name was O'Grady, ironically, but say, "Mr. O'Grady,
uh,
did you go to Oxford?" And the way he talked was brilliant. He say,
uh,
Oxford, well, yeah, yeah, oh, well, no, wonderful university, yeah, 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 yes, 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 I've been to Oxford. I've been. It was basically went through it one time. He said he'd been to
you've been to
Oxford.
Oxford, but
Uh,
not an Oxford University,
oh,
yes.
Okay, that's it, Pat. Back to the
Okay, Jude.
back to porridge. And
See you
we'll
on
be in
Monday.
touch. Okay, thanks very much.
All the
Bye,
best, Jude.
Pat.
Bye.